Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Ruchot Habaot. Welcome, everybody. And happy Purim Katan. Today is Purim Katan, which means it's good news, but it also means in another 4 weeks it's going to be Purim. And what happens 30 days after Purim? It's Pesach, and we have 3 of our kids are coming with their families, and our house is a swirl of activity already.
Is the shul going to have a soda?
Is the shul going to have a Seuda? Okay.
Is there a flyer about that?
So there's
Yes,
not a
there is.
there's the Purim Seuda for sure. I thought you meant for Pesach.
No, there's
First the Purim.
there's a flyer downstairs for Purim Suda.
Yes, there is a Purim Seuda, which is run by the Sisterhood in their usual magnificent fashion, and we all look forward to it. So Purim Katan, what is Purim Katan anyway? Good question, right? So I'm just going to read to you. There's one paragraph.
I don't know what it is.
Okay, well, if you don't know what it is, then maybe others also don't know. So I'm going to read to you the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, which is the book that I've been using when we need to have a halacha. Just has one paragraph, and it says, during a Jewish leap year, which we are engaged in right now. This year is a leap year. It means we're in Adar Aleph, and then Purim itself will come out in Adar Beis. And of course, there's a question: why does Purim come out in Adar Beis when there are 2 months of Adar? And so the reason is that Purim must be 30 days before Pesach. So that's why it's always going to be in the second Adar. So during a Jewish leap year, there are 2 months of Adar, Adar 1 and Adar 2. So we're in Adar 1 right now. Purim is celebrated in the second Adar. However, the 14th to 15th days of the first Adar, known as Purim Katan, do retain some significance as the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch retains. He says, Yom Yud Daled B'Tesvav Sheba Adar Rishon, on the 14th and 15th days of the first Adar. Gan Kain Eino Omrim Lo Tachanun. We do not say Tachanun. So Tachanun is extra prayers that we say after Shemon Esrei. We say the Amidah in Shacharis. Immediately after that, we say Tachanun, which expresses emotional expressions of asking Hashem to accept our prayers and so on. And so the rabbi said that if we finish Shemon Esrei, we go right into Tachanun, that our prayers are more likely to be received. So we say, but because of the fact that it is, we bow our head, put our head onto our arm. We don't do that on Purim. We don't do that on holidays. So Purim Katan, in a certain sense, is the holiday. Below Kel Erech HaPayim, and when the Torah is taken out on Monday and Thursday, there's a special little prayer, little paragraph that's also extra supplications. We don't say that. Below Lam Natseach, and at the end of davening, so the last 3 parts, we say Ashrei, then we say Lam Natseach and Avolat Zion. So Lam Natseach is also, there's a certain amount of supplication or sadness. We don't say that. Nor do we recite Kel Erech HaPayim. So that is Lam Natseach, right? And Varsurim Behesped. We do not make eulogies on Purim Katan. So it's interesting. A good friend of mine is being buried in Eretz Yisrael today, I guess. So I don't know what's going to happen there. But V'tanis, so we do not fast.
No, you don't do Hespedim.
We don't do Hespedim, we don't do Tanis on Purim Katan. Additional eulogies and fasts are prohibited. Yom Yud Daled, and on the 14th, which is today, Marbim Katsas B'Seuda. So on the 14th day, we have a little bit larger meal. So I'm looking forward to a little bit larger meal this afternoon, and that's on the 14th. So that's what Purim Katan is. It gets to get us into the mood that Purim is coming, and it's a little bit of a celebration. Okay, so before we start, we of course need to acknowledge our sponsors. We thank them, and today's collation is a little bit bigger, be a little nicer because it is Purim Katan. So we thank the sponsors for all that. Okay, so we find ourselves on, if you're in the Hebrew, page 206, which is actually Kuf Gimel Amud Beis, 103b, and if you're using the English, so it's on page 226 on the other side of the book, and it's the next to the last paragraph on the page. Okay, just to make sure of that. 226, the last paragraph on the page, on the left-hand side, and it starts with Amemar. Okay? So we've been talking about the issue of if I'm having a meal and I'm drinking wine, and I make the bracha on the first cup of wine that I drink, and then later maybe I have more wine, or maybe I have wine with benching. What are the rules? Do I need to make new brachos each time? And there are a lot of different opinions. So the Gemara relates an incident that took place where three of the sages were having a meal together, and the young man, I assume he was a young man, who was serving them, wanted to understand what is the rule. How do we practice if we have some wine, that we're going to have more wine, and he wanted to observe what they were doing, right? And Yogi Berra said you can observe a lot just by watching, right? He said that he wanted to see what it is that they did, so he could understand what is the rule. So you have the case. So if you're in the Hebrew, we're 1 to 5 lines down, starting with Amemar, and that is right there, right? So it's page 206. Remember the page number is on the right-hand corner, starting with Amemar. Okay. If you're in the English, it's on page 227. Last paragraph, 226 rather, 226, last paragraph on the page. 226, 206 in the Hebrew side, 226 on the English side. Okay? So the Gemara says, Amemar, Umar Zutra, Ravashi, so the three of them, Amemar, Marzutra, and Ravashi, all three of them, Havayasi Basuda. They were sitting down to have a meal. Okay? V'koy alayhu Rav Acha Bereda Rava. And Rav Acha Bereda Rava was standing over them. He was attending them. He was serving the meal, and he wanted to know. He was paying attention to how they conducted themselves, because he wanted to understand how do we practice. And instead of just asking the question, he said, "Let's see what they do, and then he'll know what to do." So here's what happened. Amemar baruch al kol kasa v'kasa. So Amemar, every time he took another cup of wine, he made another bracha. Okay. What?
Why is it necessary?
Wait, they're going to explain what they did and why they did it. So there are three people, right? We're going to have three different systems, three different methods that they're going to practice. So Amemar, the first one, every cup that he drank, he made another bracha. Okay, so right away, Ada said, what's that all about, right? We're going to find out. Well, Marzutra, the second one, Baruch Akasa Kama Vakasa Basra. He made a bracha on the first cup of wine that he drank, then he drank more wine, did not make more brachas on the other intervening cups, and then when he was going to bench, he made a bracha on the last cup. So he made on the first, on the last. So Amemar on every one, Marzutra on the first one, last one. Ravashi, and our Ravashi, Baruch Akasa Kama Vasula Baruch. He made a bracha on the first cup of wine, and that's it. He didn't. So you have three different ways. They all were eating together. They were all drinking wine together. They all had multiple cups of wine, apparently. One of them made a bracha each time. One of them made a bracha the first one and the last one, and one of them made only one bracha. So now he's confused, this young man, right? What do we do? I see three people, three different ways. Amalahu Rav Acha Bereda Rava. So Rav Acha, the son of Rava, asked them, Anan Kaman Navid, who should I follow? I see three different methods that you've been doing. What should I do? Okay, so now they explain themselves. Amemar, so Amemar, the first one. Remember, what did he do? He made a bracha each cup. So he said Nimlachana. He said the reason is because I drank the first cup. I said that's enough. I don't need any more wine. But then I changed my mind. So now, and what did we say last week? We said that if the wine goes out of your mind, in other words, if you no longer think about drinking wine, and now wine is brought to you, so now you need a bracha. So he said he's not saying. In other words, Amemar is not saying that what the other two did was incorrect. He said this is what I did and why I did it. Okay, because I thought I was finished with wine. Then they brought another wine, so I had to make another bracha. Okay. Marzutra Amar, so Marzutra is the one who had the bracha in the beginning and the bracha at the end. He sanat abdi Talmidei to Rav. So I do the practice of the Talmidim of Rav, who said that you make a bracha on the cups that you're going to use for benching, right? Rav Ashi Amar, Rav Ashi says less hilchasa Talmidei to Rav. So Rav Ashi says I don't agree with that position, and therefore one bracha was enough for me. Okay. Because he says the Hayom Tov Shechal Lios Achar the Shabbos, and what is his justification for saying we'll make only one bracha? He says if Yom Tov comes out Saturday night, right? So what happens then? So what happens on Yom when Yom Tov comes out on Saturday night? So what we make Kiddush and we make Havdalah in the Kiddush, but we don't interrupt for another cup of wine. So in other words, he says Omar Yud Kuf Nun Hey Yakna. So Yud is Yayin, Kiddush, Ner, Havdalah. So if the opinion is that you make a bracha on each cup of wine, right? So you should have interrupted. You should make your bracha for the wine for Kiddush. Now you're going to drink wine for Havdalah. You should have made another bracha on the wine at that point. So he says, right? He says that the halacha is not like the Talmidim of Rav, who said that you need to make the bracha, because here you have a case where you don't make a separate bracha because there's going to be wine with Havdalah. If you're going to say each cup of wine requires bracha, you should have a separate cup for Kiddush and a separate one for Havdalah, and each one with its own bracha. Okay, you got that? Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm. So, Velohi, and we don't do it that way, right? So now they say, okay, you brought up a good point, but that's not really relevant, because Hasam Akar Daite Mimishtaya. There, in the case of finishing up your meal and now you're going to be benching, so you've stopped eating, and your mind now is off of that. That's why when you bench, you're going to have a new bracha. But hacha lo akar daite mimishtaya. It's not a question. When you're making the kiddush, you haven't had your meal yet, and you're going to make your kiddush on the wine. You're going to say Havdalah during your kiddush. So it's not as if you somehow or other have changed your mind about what you're going to be doing. It's making one continuous process, and therefore you can't compare that to somebody who ate a meal and then he benches afterwards. Okay, so he says Kimata lavdule kam shmaya. So so now what happened? So now when it came time to make Havdalah, so his assistant came up, adlik avuka mishraga, and he used the candles. I guess this must have been the Yom Tov candles, and he lit a torch like we use a big candle for Havdalah. He lit a big torch for Havdalah. Amar lei. So they asked him, Lama lach kuli hai, why did you have to do such a thing, right? Because we know that, for example, on the second day of Pesach this year, on Saturday night, we're gonna make Havdalah in our Kiddush, right? Mm-hmm. So we're gonna do the famous, come on, Yakna Haz, right? Yain Kiddush Ner Havdalah Zman, right?
Yeah, that's what we're gonna do.
We're gonna do that on Saturday night. So and when we make Havdalah in our Kiddush on Saturday night, we look at the Yom Tov candles. Some people say bring them to the table, put them together. Some people say don't have to do that, but we use that light. We're not lighting a Havdalah candle. So they asked, why did you go ahead and do that? You could have just used the candles. He said to him, so first the answer was, he said, Shama Midaite de Nafsha Kovi. He says, my assistant did it on his own. I didn't tell him. So they didn't accept that answer. They said, Amar le, ilo shemiya le mine demar lo hava avid. No, your assistant, the waiter, whoever it is, if you hadn't instructed him to do this way, he wouldn't do it on his own. So then he had to say, Amar le, lo savar le mar avuka lavdalah mitzvah min hamuvchar. Don't you think that a nice big candle on Havdalah is special? So basically he's saying that's what we do. So he didn't want to at first he didn't want to say that I told him to do it, but then he was sort of caught after all. And he said, well, don't you think that it's nicer to do it? Okay, so now we're on the subject of Havdalah. So what did he actually say? What was the Havdalah that he said? He's Pasach v'Amar, Hamavdi ben Kodesh l'chol, ben Or l'choshech, ben Yisrael la'amim. Right? That's what we say. B'yom hashvi l'sheish yom ha'aseh. Right? That's how we. What?
That's for Motzei Shabbat.
Motzei Shabbat, we say that. And Motzei Yom Tov, we start out the same way. That's at the end. And we're going to get to that right away. So he's saying, how did we start? He started out his Havdalah by saying, who makes a separation between Kodesh and Chol, right? The holy day and the not holy day, between light and dark, or the Choshech, right? Because on Shabbos we can't light, right? Ben Yisrael Amim, that's obvious. Ben Yom HaShvi L'Sheish Yimei HaMaseh, between the seventh day and the 6 days will be permitted to work. Omar Lei. So now the question was asked, Lama Lach Kulei Hai, why do you have to make this whole statement? He says, Omar Rabbi Yehuda, Omar Rav, so Rabbi Yehuda said in the name of Rav, Hamavdi ben Kodesh l'chol, just saying Hamavdi ben Kodesh l'chol, just saying there's a separation between Kodesh and Chol, Zu Havdalah so Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. So Rabbi Yehuda Nasi apparently, when he made Havdalah on Saturday night, that's all he said. He didn't go through this whole thing, that Ben Yisrael Amim and so on. He just said Hamavdi ben Kodesh l'chol. So Amar Lei, so he said, he's Ana Baha Svirali, I'm of the opinion, Dama Rabbi Lazar, of what Rabbi Lazar said. Rabbi Lazar said, he says, in the name of Rabbi Yoshaya, Rabbi Yoshaya, HaPosech lo yivchos mi gimel, HaMosiv lo Yosef, HaPoches lo yivchos mi gimel, HaMosiv lo Yosef al Zayin. That means that if you're going to enumerate the distinctions between Shabbos and weekdays, you should, and you should not use fewer than 3 differences and not more than 7 in your Havdalah. And they're going to go through what they are. So Amar Lei, Va'amar lo tulasa Amar v'lo shev Amar. So wait a second, you didn't say 3, you didn't say 7, because let's count them. So he says, what is it? He says, Hamavdi ben Kodesh l'chol, 1. Ben Or l'chodesh choshes is 2. Ben Yisrael Amim is 3. And then Ben Yom HaShvi l'sheish yemei HaMaseh, that's 4. Right? It's not 3, it's not 7. You did 4. Right?
What was the last one that you said? The Hamasa?
The last one is Ben where are we? Ben Yom HaShvi l'sheish yemei HaMaseh. Ma'aseh means to do, right? So the 6 days of the week when we have to do, we have to produce. Those are our productive days. So, and by the way, somebody said if I go through my life and at the end of the life I'm supposed to give an account, and you answer I committed no sins in my life, and and you're asked, well, what did you do? What did you accomplish in your life? You know, and you say, well, I made sure not to commit any sins. Well, what about all the mitzvahs? Did you? So that's like when you drive a tractor trailer from New Jersey to California, and the truck is empty. So you get there. So you got there. You didn't have any mishaps on the road, but basically you didn't accomplish. So that's why we say on Shabbos, Asher Bara Elokim La'asos, which means we're here to do. We were put on this earth to do, right? And I don't have to tell you, ladies, what it means to do. And that's our job in the world. We're here not just to go through life and not to make any errors, but we're here to produce. So anyway, so he says that 3 or 7, right? So Amalei Ivra, he says Ben Yom Hashvi L'Sheish Yemei HaMaseh Me'ein Chasimahu. So that last phrase, comparing Shabbos to the weekdays, that is basically connected to the end of the bracha. So it's like a parallel. So that's not like an additional one. So it's 3 plus that. So that one's like the end one. Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel, and Rabbi Yehuda said the name of Shmuel, Hamavdil tzarich sheyomar me'ein chasima samach lecha chasimaso. When the person is making the Havdalah, he should say a phrase similar to the end of the bracha, close to the end of the bracha. Okay, and so that's why when he says Ben Ben Yom Hashvili Sheish Me'amaseh. So that's similar, okay? Upumbedisa Yomer, and in the town of Pumbedisa, where they had a big yeshiva, they said, Me'ein Pesichasan Samach Chasimasan. So he said that the beginning part of the bracha should be similar to the end of the bracha. My beinayu. So what's the difference? It seems like if you're quoting another group of people, they must have something. They must disagree with what's already been said. Otherwise, there's no reason to mention them, right? Ika beinayu yom tov shecholios achar Shabbos. So now to what Rita said, and I didn't ignore what you said, but I just put it off for this because when Yom Tov comes out on Motzei Shabbat, how do we end our Havdalah? I'm going to tell you right away. The Chasimun, we say Ben Kodesh LeKodesh. We say Hamav de Ben Kodesh LeKodesh. So we started out our Havdalah by saying Ben Kodesh LeChol, and now we're ending Ben Kodesh LeKodesh. So the beginning and the ending are not the same, right? So that's why he says that the beginning and that the beginning and the ending should be the same. That's a difference of opinion between the one that says that in your list you should have one that's going to be similar to the end. Okay. So so the one who says me'ein pesichasan samach chasimasan. So the person who says that the beginning should be like the ending, lo boy lememar ben kedusha Shabbos lekedushas Yom Tov Ivdalta. You don't have to make that phrase because in our Havdalah we're going to say that. We're going to say Ben Kedusha Shabbos, the Kedushas Yom Tov Havdalta. They say Havdalta, right? So we continue, right? So Uman Damar Me'ein Chasimason, Somach Chasimason, and the one that says that the ending should be similar to one of the ending phrases, Boy Lamemar Ben Kedusha Shabbos, the Kedushas Yom Tov Havdalta. So there's a difference of opinion. Of course, we know what we do. We say that. We say that. So we accept that opinion. That you need to have in your Havdalah a phrase which is going to be similar to the way you're going to end your bracha. Okay. Gufa. So getting back to our text, Amar Rabbi Elazar, Amar Rabbi Yoshaya. So Rabbi Elazar says the name of Rabbi Yoshaya, Haposea hapoches lo yivchos mishalosh, v'mosiv lo yosef al sheva. Okay. So now we established the rules, right? That if you're going to have, you should have something in there similar to the ending. But what about the number of distinctions? So remember we said Rabbi Yehuda Nasi only said one, but apparently we don't do it that way because we know that what we say is 3 plus 1. So what is it? What are the 3? What are the 7? So a question is raised. Omer Havdalos b'motzei Shabbosos b'motzei Yom Tovim. So when do we say Havdalah? We say Havdalah on Saturday night. B'motzei Shabbos l'Yom Tov, and when Shabbos goes into Yom Tov. B'motzei Yom Tov l'Chol HaMoed, and when Yom Tov goes into Chol HaMoed, right? So on the second, after the second day of Yom Tov, now we're going to make Havdalah because we're going to Chol HaMoed. Avalo b'motzei Yom Tov l'Shabbos, but we don't make Havdalah when Yom Tov, right? So when Shabbos when Yom Tov is ending and then Shabbos starting. So if Yom Tov were on a Thursday night, we're on a Friday, and now Friday night, Yom Tov is ending, you don't make Havdalah. Okay? So, pardon? Right. So, okay. So he says, right, Harogel Omer Harbe. So what's going on? So the person who is accustomed to say the 7 brachos, V'she'ein Harogel Omer Achas. So he's only one bracha. So now we're having like 3 different opinions. Is it 1? Is it 3? Is it 7? Right? Tanai. So he says this is a machlokes. This is a difference of opinion among Tanaim. So remember the Tanaim preceded the Amoraim. So we need to establish what is the rule because the Amoraim cannot. They can differ, but they have to accept the opinion of one Tana, and they have to work with that. The Amar Rabbi Yochanan says, "Benan shel kadoshim Omer Achas." The son of the holy ones says only one bracha. So who is that? Who is that son of the holy one? So you have actually in your note, but he says, "V'no ha'am lomar sholosh," and the nation, the practice of the people. This is another example of what we do is not necessarily based on the instruction of the rabbis. This is how the Jewish people accepted to make Havdalah. And that's how we do it. We do it that way because that was the accepted practice, and the rabbis saw what was going on. They didn't stand in the way, and they said, this is what the people are doing, and it was certainly okay. So that's what we do. So now he says, Man niu banan shel kadoshim. Who is this person that he identifies as the son of the holy ones? He's Rabbi Menachem ben Bar Simoi. It's Rabbi Menachem Bar Simoi. Va'amai karile banan shel kadoshim. So why do they give him such a title, the son of the holy ones? Delo istakel b'tzurasa dezuzah. So their coins, their money that they used, they didn't have their own mint necessarily. So the money they used was the coinage that was produced by the ruling authority. And very often on their coins, just like we might have, I don't know, Abraham Lincoln or Thomas Jefferson, they would put pictures of their gods on the coin. So he wouldn't look at that because he didn't want to look at that. So he trained himself not to look. So he was considered to have like an extra level of piety. So they gave him credit. Pardon? Okay. Shalach la Rav Shmuel Bar Idi. So Rav Shmuel Bar Idi sent a message. He says, Chananya achi omar achas. So he says, my brother Chananya said we make only one bracha. And we don't do it that way. Right? So now we know we don't do it that way. We know how we do it, right? We're doing it 3 plus the 1, right? Amar Rav Yoshua ben Levi, so Rav Yoshua ben Levi said, Hamavdil tzarech shiomar me'ein havdalos amuros b'Torah. So when we make havdalah, you should make it similar to the havdalahs that are mentioned in the Torah. So we're going to see what that is. Meisvei, Seder havdalas heach. So what is the order? How do we do it? Right? Omer. First we say Hamavdil ben kodesh l'chol, right? Then ben or l'choshech, familiar. Ben Yisrael Amim, right? Ben Yom HaShvili Sheish Me'amaseh. And then he goes on, Ben Tameh L'Tahar, which we don't say, right? Ben Hayam L'Charava, between the sea and the dry land, we don't say that too. Ben Mayim Elyonim L'Mayim HaTachtonim, the upper waters and the lower waters, we don't say that either. Ben Kohanim L'Levim V'Yisraelim, between the Kohanim, the Levim, and the Israelim, we don't say that. The Chosein, the Seder Bereshis, and he ends up with Seder Bereshis. So this is totally unfamiliar to us. We don't do that.
What is Seder?
But this is the opinion of the one who said it was seven distinctions. We use 3. But so if you're going to use a 7, this is the formula that you should use. There are others who say B'Yotze Bereshis. You end up, instead of saying Seder Bereshis, say Yotze Bereshis, means the creator of Bereshis.
What does Seder Bereshis mean exactly?
The order. Seder is the organization.
But what does that mean?
So basically to say that he organized just as Sunday follows Shabbos, so the order of creation, and that's really, it's an interesting question because we think of the natural world as being natural, right? And when we see something unusual like the Red Sea splitting or something, that's considered to be unusual to us. That's a miracle. But to think that the natural order of the world is natural, that it sort of happened by accident, that takes a lot of faith, because if you're walking along the path and you see a bee that's buzzing around a little flower, you wonder how did that flower, because what's the bee doing? The bee is taking the nectar, right, for food for the young bees, but at the same time on its feet he's picking up touches the stamen of the flower, and then he goes and he touches on the pistil of the next flower, so he's fertilizing the flower. So without the bee, the flower could not reproduce, and without the flower, the bee could not reproduce. So if they were not created at the same time, the world could not exist, right? So to say that the natural world is somehow, it just happened by nature, it's just not natural. So when we praise the fact that there's an order in the world, we're recognizing that this didn't happen just random, okay?
I mean, I understand Yotzer Bereshit, but
Right. Okay, so then either one is, Yotzer is the created and Seder is the organized it, okay? And of course we say that in the order of creation, so plants came first, then animals, but but they say that what happened was everything was put in place, nothing was started until man came along, and then the switch was pulled, and everything had been in suspense, and then it got to work. Okay. So Rabbi Yossi Bar Yehuda Omer, Chosei Mekadesh Yisrael. He says we end Mekadesh Yisrael, which is not how we do, but that's how he says we do. V'misa ha ben hayam lecharava. So, and if you're going to say between the sea and dry land, which also we don't say, lo kasiva behavdalah. That's not written in Havdalah anywhere. He says, Sami mikan ben hayam lecharava. Take that one out. So if you take that one out, now you don't have 7 anymore, right? And if he says you need to have 7, so ihachi ben yom hashvi l'sheish yemei ha'maaseh. So if you're saying between the 7th day and the other days, the productive days, nami me'en chasimahu. So that's like similar to the ending, right? So b'tzad chada v'leka shiva. So now he took one away, so you don't have 7, right? Because you're saying that this one doesn't count, right? Because we said even when we say our 3, we have this also. So it would be 4, but we don't count that one. So he's saying you don't count that one. Now all you have is 6. How does that work? Amri. So what he says is Kohanim, Levim, Yisraelim, where we have the Kohanim, Levim, Yisraelim. So you can split those up, right? Trei mili ninu. That's 2, because Bein Levim and Yisraelim. So it's between the Levim and the Yisraelim, because the Kohanim and Levim are the same, or they're at least from the same tribe. So you can say between the Levim and the Yisraelim, so that gives us 2, and now you're back up to 7. Right? Otherwise, it's a problem. It's okay. Diksiv, Beisahi Avdil Hashem as Shevet Halevi, because there's a pasuk that says at that time Hashem separated the Shevet of Levi, and the Kohanim are members of Shevet Levi. So there's a distinction between the Leviim, including the Kohanim, and the rest of us. Okay. So, but wait a second. The Gemara says Bein HaKohanim LeLeviim, because there's also a mention of separating or distinguishing between the Kohanim and Leviim, Diksiv, because the pasuk says, Bnei Amram, the sons of Amram, Aaron and Moshe. So Aaron and Moshe were brothers; they're sons of Amram, right? Vayavdil Aaron lakadisho kodesh kadoshim, and now that word Vayavdil, right? What does that sound like? Separate. How sounds like Havdalah, right? So he says that he made a separation because Aaron is the one that went into Kodesh Kodashim. Well, he's my husband, my husband. So how do you end the bracha now? Because you have that separation. He says Rav Amar, he says Makadesh Yisrael, Shmuel Amar Hamal bin Kodesh L'chol. So he says that Rav says that you end up by saying Makadesh Yisrael, and Shmuel disagrees. He says Hamal bin Kodesh L'chol, which is what we say. So Laid Allah Abai. So Abai didn't like that. He didn't like that ending. He's the Tamer of Yosef. Some say Rav Yosef said the same thing. Ahad Rav, because of what Rav had said. Tana Mishmei Rav Yeshua ben Chananya. He says he learned basically based on the statement of Yeshua ben Chananya. Kol Achosim Mekadesh Yisrael v'Amavde ben Kodesh L'chol. Anybody who says Mekadesh Yisrael, right, and he says Hamavde ben Kodesh L'chol. We extend his life and his years, right? But we don't do that. We don't say that. So, what's going on over here? So he says, we basically don't say that whole statement in Havdalah, and we don't say that. We just say Hamad ben Kodesh L'chol. So Abai was of the opinion that we're doing it improperly, but we don't do what he said. So now we have another incident that took place. The Gemara says Ula ikla lepumbedisa. So Ula went to Pumbedisa. Amar le Rav Yehuda le Rav Yitzchak Barei. So Rav Yehuda said to his son Rav Yitzchak, he said, Zil amti le kalkala de peri. Here's such an important person coming to visit. Bring him a fruit basket, right? Bring him a basket of fruit. And he said, "V'chazai hechi avdil," and again he wants to observe. He wants to see how does Ula do, because Ula is coming from Eretz Yisrael. They are in Babel, and they want to see basically how things are done there. So he said, "Bring him a fruit basket, and then you'll hang out with him for a while, and you'll see how does he make Havdalah." Okay, so what happened? Lo Azel. So his son, for whatever reason, decided not to go. He didn't go. And what he did was, Shadar Leila Abaye. So he sent him to Abaye. So he asked Abaye to do it. Abaye at that time was a young man. He said, Kiyasa Abaye, when Abaye came, Amar Le, Hechi Amar, so he said to him, so Rabbi Yitzchak said, so okay, what did he say? What did Ula say? Amar Le, Baruch Hamalta ben Kodesh L'chol. So he didn't add that business about Yisrael, right? He just said Hamalta ben Kodesh L'chol. Omar V'sulo, he said that's it. He didn't say anything more. So now at least he had that question settled, that's what is being said in Eretz Yisrael. But now, so Rabbi Yitzchak, so Asala Kamei Davua, so this Rabbi Yitzchak came before his father, and remember the father told him to go himself and bring the fruit basket and see what's happening. So he didn't go, right? That's like when I cut school on a snow day. Oh my God. And my mother came. My mother wasn't at the train station to pick me up, so I used to take the train every day to go to school. And when it snowed, sometimes they would call school or the buses, because I used to take the train from Metuchen to Elizabeth, and we took a bus from the train station to school. And it was a heavy snow. We got into the train station in Elizabeth, and I said to my friend who went with me, "They're going to call off school today, you know? So let's just not go." So I said, "Well, maybe we won't call off school. So let's just go." So we went shopping, went to see a movie, whatever. And then I took the regular train home at the end of the day, and my mother wasn't waiting for me. So I called. I said, "Ma, right?" She said, "Where are you?" I said, "I'm at the train station." "Where?" She said, "Where were you all day?" I said, "What do you were there? I was in school." So she said, "Well, because Rabbi Jaffe called and told us that school was canceled." So poor Rabbi Yitzchak was caught in the same situation. So his father said to him, he said, "Hechi Amar, what did he say?" Amar Le, so now Rabbi Yitzchak knew he was caught. He said, "Ana lo azil." He said, "I didn't go." He said, "Ana shadrisi alabai." I sent Abai. I sent somebody else. At least he didn't do what I did. He told his father, "I didn't go, but I sent somebody in his place." Amar Le, and he told me, "Hamavdi ben kodesh l'chol." What he said was Hamavdi ben kodesh l'chol. Amar Le. So the father said to the son, he says, "Rav Ravanusa Demar, Usravusa Demar, Gomer Le Lemar Delo Tema Shmata Mepume." So, because of the fact that you did not listen, did not do what I asked you to do, you lost the right to have this din, this law said in your name, because you didn't go. So Abaye is going to get credit. You lost out. So I guess that really hurt him, but there you go. So that was sort of a very mild reprimand from the father to son, saying, "You lost an opportunity." Meisvei, the question is raised.
Another question. Are we talking about regular Shabbat or Shabbat into Yom Tov?
Regular Shabbat. Regular Shabbat. So they're saying,
The question is on a different code because it's Kodesh into Chol, so there's no question there.
but apparently they also said, right, Mekadesh Yisrael. They also said it in the bracha. So Ula didn't say that, and so they learned from this that in Eretz Yisrael they don't say that, and therefore we don't say it. In our Havdalah, we don't end up our Havdalah.
Yeah, but either one would be okay.
Well, listen.
I mean, as far as the bracha is concerned.
Okay, but we don't have the right to create our own brachas.
No, we don't pay it, but they, I mean.
Right. So then they were not so sure.
Well, maybe someday you will.
They were not sure, and they wanted to know how is it practiced in Eretz Yisrael, right? Because what had taken place is that, remember, they ended up the bracha, and it says here, Abaye didn't like what was said when somebody said this business about adding Yisrael in there, and it says Abaye, actually he says he cursed that statement. He didn't like that statement. So now the Gemara is telling you why was Abaye so upset when he heard that? It's because when he was a young man, he was the one who went to find out how it's practiced in Eretz Yisrael. He saw how it's practiced. So now, if somebody would come along on his own and make a change, which we don't have a right to do, that made Abai upset, because he knew that the correct way to do it was the way we do it now. Mavdiv ben Kodesh.
Could I ask you a question? Is that the reason why today, I mean in today's life, women that are alone, for example, I don't make Havdalah, I make Hamavdil ben Kodesh Lechol v'gamarnu.
Right.
So that's it. So I'm saying, is this where they're stemming of Hamavdil ben Kodesh Lechol, that yotze me from the whole
So
Havdalah? That's what I'm asking.
so they're saying that Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, certainly an authority, that was his Havdalah.
Okay.
Right.
So
He
I'm
didn't-
going according to
He didn't go through the whole thing. So what you do, a lot of people do, it's if you're not saying the whole Havdalah, you don't have the whole thing. If you make that statement, then you have already that effectively makes Havdalah, right? And even in our Shemona Esrei on Saturday night, we insert Havdalah, right? In the bracha of Atah Chanein, we say Atah Chanantanu, right? And it's interesting too that in some parts of our Shemona Esrei, if we miss something or skip something, we have to go back and repeat. This we don't go back. We don't repeat it. And the reason is because we're going to make Havdalah later when we come home. So there's a lot to know, that's for sure. Okay, so the Gemara continues. Meisvei, Kol habrachos kulam posech bebarach v'chosein bahen bebarach. Chutz mi birkas mitzvos. So they say all the brachos, we start out with baruch and we end with baruch, except for a bracha of mitzvos, ubirkas aperos, and a bracha that we make to eat fruit, ubracha hasmucha lechaverta, and a bracha that is next to or continues another thought, ubracha acharona shebekriya shema, and the last bracha of kriya shema. And we're going to find out why all that is, God willing, next week. Thank you.